Welcome to the night shift. It's time for a toy review. We're looking at the Percival figure from The Legend of Vox Machina, made by McFarlane Toys. Starting off with the sculpting and the painting of the figure, I honestly think that Percy looks fantastic. They did a very, very good job. Generally speaking, McFarlane does a good job of making figures look like what they're supposed to look like. In simplest terms, if you compare the figure to the art on the back of the box, I mean, it's a pretty darn good image of Percy. He looks like Percy, he looks like the cartoon, it's spot on. I'm impressed with that. But generally speaking, this is a McFarlane toy. I kind of expect them to do good on the sculpt. My Percy does have one flaw, and that is on the top of his head, he has this little hair spike that busted off. And unfortunate as it is what it is. I will say a complaint too is the way they achieved his glasses. I don't really love how that looks. It works for what it is, but I don't think that's the best way to do it. It kind of, because for whatever reason, the glasses sort of sit high on his face. His glasses are like on his eyebrows. It's kind of odd looking. But the paint for the rest of the figure, he looks like Percy. They did a nice job on making his coat have some shading to it, and it looks good, I think. As for the accessories, the only real accessory Percy comes with is the pepper box. The sculpting on the pepper box looks good. The paint, I suppose you could say, is a little bland, but the pepper box overall, it looks like what it's supposed to, and I don't really have any major complaints with this particular accessory. Also, I forgot to mention, the pepper box can fit easily into the holster on his belt. A poopy doo-doo complaint I do have is that he does come with a stand. Normally I don't have a problem with stands, but the way they packaged it is dumb, because this is a type of figure that's kind of more collectible based, so you know, why would you put it in here behind a plastic thing so I have to ruin the box? Generally, I'm not a collector, I'm more someone who's going to open the figure and play with it, but I hate when they do this kind of crap because I have to ruin the box to get the thing out. And I think that's something that McFarlane Toys tends to do, is put the stands behind a plastic thing like this, but I don't care for that very much. So he doesn't get to stand on his stand. His box is going to live like this, and he's just going to have to stand on his own. Speaking on his ability to stand up, he can stand pretty well. He does tend to fall over. I would describe his articulation as sort of sticky and yet loose. It's something I've kind of experienced with McFarlane figures. Sometimes with McFarlane Toys, they tend to have articulation that's a little awkward. I don't know. I don't want to complain on them necessarily for the sake of complaining, but it's just something I've noticed. But since we mentioned articulation, his head can swivel back and forth. He can look left and right easily. I'm not going to force a 360, but I think he could probably do it. He can look up that far, look down that far. Arm is on a ball hinge, and it can move up that far. Full 360. A tight bicep swivel. Ooh, you can hear that creakiness. Double hinge elbow. The wrist is on a ball joint. The wrist has that situation going on there. If you rotate his hand, you can get some up and down out of it. It looks like two ball joints here in his torso. So he's got swivel here, swivel there. Does everything a ball joint can do. Leg kicks out. Leg kicks back. Double knee bend. Kick out to the side. Limited ankle. Pretty darn good toe bend. So overall, pretty good articulation. sort of that sticky joint kind of thing that happens that you see with McFarlane Toys, and his limited ankle movement makes it hard for him to stand up. I think you can get him into some pretty decent poses though. Oh yeah, and I forgot to mention you can have him hold the gun, although because of the shape of the gun, it's kind of in an odd position and you have to play around with his wrist to get it where you want it to be. Another point of order to really notice, because this is a McFarlane figure, his coat is that sort of rubbery material that McFarlane likes to use. It's not a material I don't really know what, I have no idea what this is. I mean, it's action figure magic. I don't know how they make things. Also his holster. His holster is also made out of that rubber material, and I think his belt overall is kind of made out of that same rubbery material. Which is good because that makes it so you can get him into some good poses. If you were to have some kind of him on a stand or something, you could potentially, if you had a stand that you had him on and you had a way to wedge the bottom of his coat, you could get some cool jumping poses out of it. One thing I'm noticing is that his knees are a little loose. Not so much that they're loose, but because his limbs are so thin and kind of skinny, it feels a little loose. He's also got sort of a ratcheting joint in his knee. Stand up, please. Some quick size comparisons. Something small, a Lego minifigure. Medium, the SH Figuarts Luke Skywalker. Something large, the Spartan Collection Master Chief. I would say that this Percival figure, he's pretty darn good. I would recommend him to anyone who is a fan of Vox Machina, especially if they loved the show. And yeah, if you're a fan of sort of fantasy characters, I think this would be a decent figure to pick up. Although I wouldn't recommend him to everybody because his posability is slightly on the limited side, but still a decent figure overall, and I'm happy to have it. Quick preview for next time. I've got the other currently available Vox Machina figure. Thanks so much for watching. Good night.